My teenage years and most of my 20s were dominated by thoughts of worry, anxiety, and fear just in general. And I found this difficult because I usually didn't know what I was actually worried about. It was just a vague sense of worry and dread. And I really wish I could go back in time and tell 18-year-old Billy about the technique of active imagination, because it would have made life so much easier. I want to make this video as practical as possible, so I'm going to explain what active imagination is, first of all, and then go over a very basic idea of how to use it on a weekly, if not daily basis, or at the very least, how I use it. So I'm going to start by quoting on page 138 by Inner Work by Robert Johnson, because he introduces this idea in a very, very simple way. So to go straight to page 138, just a quote from here. Essentially, active imagination is a dialogue that you enter into with the different parts of yourself that live in the unconscious. In some ways, it is similar to dreaming, except that you are fully awake and conscious of the experience. And here's the key part. In your imagination, you begin to talk to your images and interact with them. They answer back. And that's what all of this is about. It's about actively participating with a fantasy that you find yourself having. We all daydream, we all drift off from time to time. So this is a technique to make best use of those moments. And it turns out that these moments are absolute gold mines if you know what you're actually looking out for. So one more quick note from this book, and then I'll talk you through just a really basic process. Robert Johnson actually uses the example of worry, which is perfect because that's exactly what I've used it for as well in most of my life. So on page 141, just to quote from this little section here, a good example of this phenomenon is worry. Worry is one form of passive fantasy. So long as we sit passively and let the worry fantasies possess us, there is never a resolution. But in active imagination, it is possible to go to the worry, actively confront it, and enter into dialogue with it. Find out who or what is in conflict within us and do something about it. So, what makes active imagination active instead of just passive daydreaming is that we are participating with the thoughts and the emotions and the images that turn up. The idea isn't just to make something up, but instead to notice when you're gripped by a specific thought or emotion or mood or obsession or difficulty or whatever it might be, and actually engage with it. So you want to fully experience it, not just partially experience it in a passive way. And if we take the example of worry, it might help to illustrate this idea in 4 different steps. So I'm personifying myself, first of all, as this head. And I'm going to be looking at this tattooed character over here to symbolize my worry. And hopefully this will make things nice and clear. And hopefully that's in focus as well, because I can't quite see it. So step 1 is to ask, where is this worry coming from? What is it inside me that is trying to get my attention through this worry? Who is it that is inside of me that is trying to tell me something about this emotion? And this is especially useful if you know already about parts work or sub-personalities, but I'll save those terms for another video. I appreciate also that this might sound like a really strange question, but what you are doing is that you are speaking to yourself. It's a conversation between your conscious and your unconscious mind. The worry, in this example, is operating just under the surface of our conscious awareness, so we're trying to make it more real by personifying it. That way, we can engage with it as though it's another person with thoughts, with emotions, fears, desires, stories to tell, and everything else. A very important point to note here, by the way, is that you're not forcing your ideas onto this image. You're not saying what it should or shouldn't do, but instead you're noticing how it is actually feeling. In the same way that you can't force another person in real life to be happy or sad, you can't force this personified feeling to be what you want it to be either. But anyway, step 2. Now that you've identified where this voice is coming from, invite it to talk further and elaborate. Again, if we stick with the example of worry, you could ask, what do you want me to know? What do you have to say? And it might take some time for it to reply, or it might be immediate. It might take the form of words or images or a more subtle intuition, just in one direction over another. But pay attention to where it is that you are being pulled. It might start to tell you a story or direct your attention towards a story where that worry first became noticeable. But again, encourage it to continue the story in whatever feels right. It doesn't really matter whether it's factually true or not, or whether it's exaggerated. It's the tone of the message which is more important. So just to repeat that because it's so important, it doesn't matter if it's factually true or not. It's the tone of the message which is more important. So to take that further, which parts of the story are acceptable or unacceptable? Does a specific person keep recurring in this story? What is it about a person that has caused you the worry? Maybe it's a situation or an environment instead, but again, it's the same question. What is it about this that is causing you that worry? So encourage as many details as possible in that story. And step 3 in this process is to fully engage with the experience by bringing in your emotions and your sensations. If you feel physically uncomfortable while you're re-remembering this, then there's a good chance it's worth exploring. And again, which part of that story is making you feel uncomfortable? Pay particular attention to that answer. It's going to keep reoccurring if you don't do anything about it. So it's worth consciously engaging with it so that you can deal with it and so that you can process it. This is all about listening to the unconscious mind instead of just repressing or suppressing difficult thoughts from your conscious mind into the unconscious. Unfortunately, out of sight and out of mind doesn't apply in this situation. Out of sight just means that you've lost track of what that thought is doing. So it could easily be just popping around like this. You've given it free rein to grow into some kind of monster, or potential monster at least, just hiding away. You could be giving it the ability to latch onto other thoughts, and none of these are particularly good options. What we need to do is, if it's out of sight, then please bring it back into mind. Get it back into frame. I've not really been able to watch the video as I'm doing this. Hopefully this little tattooed guy has been popping in and out of frame as I've been doing this. But if it's out of sight, please bring it into mind. And by that, I mean the conscious mind. The final step here, by the way, will be then to thank the personified character for whatever it has decided to share with you. You're building this healthy bridge between the conscious and the unconscious mind. And you're learning to realize that there isn't actually anything to be scared of. There might be some short-term discomfort, but that's nothing in comparison to the long-term devastating effects of unchecked worry and fear. So thank that part of you for having the courage to show up and to tell its story. It's in a work by Robert Johnson that goes into far more detail on this process, and he breaks it down into 4 steps, which are, from my best memory, invitation, dialogue, values, and rituals. So they're the 4 steps there. I realized I was counting that off screen. Invitation, dialogue, values, and rituals. So if you want to take active imagination to the next level, I definitely recommend giving this a read. And it also shows you how you can use a similar process to engage more deeply with your dreams as well, if that's something that you'd be more interested in. I know the title of this video might seem really extreme, but I do genuinely mean that this technique has saved me countless hours and times from just confusion and anxiety and worry and fear and just any other difficulty. It's a process that I can rely on over and over again to engage with the situation and the process and learn how to actually process what has happened or what I think could happen. Sometimes the situations where I don't get closure from another person and a situation has already passed, but it's not fully resolved in my mind. It's by using this that I can then resolve it myself rather than having to rely on that other person in real life. If I notice what it is that I'm fantasizing or daydreaming about, whether it's positive or negative, healthy or unhealthy, it doesn't matter. It means that I can take control of that fantasy and see what is specifically going on. See what it is that I'm actually fantasizing about. I'm engaging with the story first so that I can strip it away and see what the core issue is underneath and the one that's having this big magnetic pull on me. I'm going to feel that pull anyway, So I might as well be aware of it, of what it is that's actually pulling me in, so that I can at least have some choice over the matter. And again, just in case you're wondering, I do normally become aware of these daydreams whilst I'm walking or running. I personally find it quite difficult to just sit there with a journal and consciously choose just to start this process, write it all out. I have had some success with that at times, but for me, it's mainly walking and running. Just try it out as often as you can over the course of a month and see just what insights come to you. But overall, just to make this really clear, active imagination can help you to glimpse and engage with the shadow material that underlies the story itself, which means that you get to notice the shallow and the superficial layer of that story first, and then use that as a prompt to dive into the deeper and the more transformational layers. I have absolutely enormously oversimplified the idea for this, for the sake of this video, and I will do a more thorough step-by-step version in the future. I just wanted to make sure that you're aware of the term active imagination, and also to give a really great and easy book recommendation for anyone that might be struggling right now at this moment with a particular thought or fantasy or obsession or coping mechanism or story that they're telling themselves or so on. But if you want to learn more about what shadow work is, when I was referring to that before, then just follow the video after this that'll be popping up. It'll be popping up on the screen anytime around now. And yeah, that's about it for this lesson. So I will see you again in a future one. See you soon.